Can you hear me? Is this thing on? What do The Office, Woody Allen and the Beatles have in common? How did a radio broadcast spark panic? What is mockumentary? How did it travel from the great and terrifying Orson Welles to New Zealand's vampires? In this video, I'll dive into the world of mockumentary films that parody, exaggerate, and even terrify. And what do spaghetti have to do with it? It all started way back in 1938 or so. The story goes when Orson Welles' The War of the Worlds aired on the radio. Orson Welles was a renowned American director, actor, and screenwriter. His notable works include Citizen Kane: The Trial and The Lady from Shanghai. The broadcast of The War of the Worlds aired on CBS Radio, based on the novel of the same name by Herbert Wells. It told the story of an alien invasion of Earth. Presented as a documentary-style narrative, it was so convincing that many listeners believed it was real. According to later reports, the broadcast reached about 6 million listeners, and roughly a fifth of them believed the events were real. That's around 1.2 million people. Many either missed the program's opening disclaimer about the fictional nature of the events. Some listeners had switched over from another station's top-of-the-hour news, or forgot about it as the broadcast unfolded. What happened next? People started to panic. Some barricaded themselves in their homes. Others tried to flee the city. And some even went to police stations eager to help fight off the alien invaders. Phone lines were overwhelmed. The National Guard was mobilized in New Jersey, and fire brigades were put on alert. Adding to the chaos was the fact that the broadcast had no commercial sponsors, so it aired without interruptions, further enhancing the sense of realism. People claimed they saw lightning-like flashes from the aliens and could even smell poisonous gases. The panic only grew. The climax came when a power station in Concrete, Washington went offline. Residents of Concrete were convinced that the power lines had been destroyed by the advancing Martians. In the end, it all concluded the way such situations often do in the USA, with lawsuits demanding compensation for emotional distress. All were dismissed except for one which Orson Welles insisted on settling. The claim came from a man who ruined his new shoes while running away from the Martians. The modern view is that the panic was greatly exaggerated. Newspapers inflated the story as a curiosity, but it's hard to know exactly what happened. However, one thing that's clear is the importance of this radio broadcast to the topic of our video. For mockumentary. What exactly is a mockumentary? It's simple. The term mockumentary comes from the English words mock, meaning to ridicule, or mock and documentary. It creates a genre that blends elements of comedy and pseudo-documentary filmmaking. The key feature of a mockumentary is that the events shown in the film are presented as real, but in reality, they are fictional. This genre allows directors to parody documentary films, creating a satirical portrayal of life, art, or social phenomena. This is what sets it apart from pseudo-documentary cinema, which is also styled like a documentary but isn't necessarily satirical or comedic. In the meantime, think of some examples of pseudo-documentary films, especially in the horror genre. I'll list a few at the end of the video and we can compare our answers. It's widely believed that one of the first to bring the genre to life was Orson Welles with his The War of the Worlds. The War of the Worlds wasn't his, of course, but Welles, you get the idea. Here's another example, also early and important for the history of mockumentary, and once again playing a trick on the audience. But this time not as cruel, I'd say even quite sweet. It was about spaghetti. Remember when I mentioned at the beginning, and what does spaghetti have to do with it? Now I'm going to tell you. While The War of the Worlds was more of a pseudo-documentary without mockery, the prank that BBC played on its viewers can be called the first full-fledged mockumentary, albeit in a short format. The creators of the Panorama programme on BBC, a respected serious show about current world news, pulled off an unexpected prank. It was probably the element of surprise that played a key role in why so many believed this pseudo-news story. In this episode, a popular host who typically covered political and other significant global events served as the narrator for a video showing southern Switzerland. However, the weather troubles had passed and now the harvest was underway. Viewers were told that due to a mild winter, the spaghetti harvest was under threat as they supposedly grew on trees. As you can see, the visuals match the narration with actors picking fresh spaghetti fruits from the trees. And the viewers believed it. Here, it's important to make a note. In the 50s, spaghetti was an exotic dish, almost a delicacy for the English. They mostly saw it in canned form with tomato sauce, so their gullibility can be forgiven. The day after the broadcast, radio's phone lines were flooded with calls asking how to grow spaghetti at home. This hoax became one of the most famous TV pranks and is remembered as a prime example of a successful April Fool's joke. It's also another example of what helped give birth to the modern mockumentary. By the way, I tried growing it, but I think they didn't get enough sunlight. I'll give it another go in the spring. Now we've come to one of the first full-length mockumentary films. The genre may not have fully unfolded yet, but it was getting pretty close. And it's a film about the Beatles. It's called A Hard Day's Night. The plot follows the band as they travel from Liverpool to London for a TV appearance the next day. Along the way, they encounter various amusing situations, largely based on the Beatles' immense popularity and featuring Paul McCartney's grandfather John, who joins them on the journey. The film stars the band members themselves, but the entire plot follows a script. It was written by Alan Owen, a screenwriter who wasn't exactly a big name, but he was familiar to the band, which is why they chose him. A couple of interesting facts about the film. During the shoot, George Harrison met his future wife. She played one of the schoolgirls on the train in the film. And among the audience at the show, you can spot a 13-year-old Phil Collins, the famous British musician. A Hard Day's Night became a precursor to another music-related film, one that eventually led to the creation of the term mockumentary. It's This Is Spinal Tap by Rob Reiner. It's also a film about a music band, but this time it's a fictional one called Spinal Tap. The film shows several months in the life of the band as they embark on their farewell tour across the USA. Once a successful British rock group, they are now on the decline of their fame, and the film is shot in the mockumentary genre. Now we can officially say that, because it was director Rob Reiner who coined the term mockumentary to describe the film he was making. Mockumentary. It's a bit ironic that the documentary style played a cruel joke on the film after its premiere. It didn't become very popular precisely because many viewers didn't realize that what was happening in the film was fictional and watched it as if it were a real documentary. The film gained its fame after being released on VHS, gained a huge fan base, and eventually became a cult classic. By the way, the band Spinal Tap existed 5 years before the film was released. You might be surprised since I earlier mentioned that it's a fictional band, but that's true. The first appearance of this fictional rock band was actually on television in the comedy show, The TV Show on ABC. Spinal Tap! After the film, the band became a real bona fide group. They performed concerts, and in 2009 they even went on a small tour across America, performed at the Glastonbury Festival in England, and even held a concert at Wembley in London. And a little piece of good news for the fans of the film. This year, the filming of This Is Spinal Tap 2 began. So who knows, maybe Rob Reiner will surprise us again. Before we move on to modern examples, I want to talk about Woody Allen, who also contributed to the mockumentary, The Great and Terrible Woody Allen. Well, he might be great, but he only earns the terrible part due to his strange personal life. He has several films that influenced our genre. The first of the three I want to mention was released way back in 1969. Take the Money and Run is a crime comedy about Virgil, a young man who just can't resist stepping onto the criminal path. The film features a documentary-style investigation, including interviews with characters who talk about Virgil's life and a chronicle of his criminal activities. And all of this was in 1969, a full 15 years before the term mockumentary was even coined. Later, Woody Allen made Zelig, another comedy in the pseudo-documentary genre. It's about a man named Zelig who has the ability to transform, mimicking the people he interacts with. At political gatherings, he gives populist speeches. At a party with black people, he becomes black himself. With Zelig, Woody Allen also had a genre false start. Zelig was released in 1983, a couple of years before Rob Reiner's This Is Spinal Tap. And the third film, close to our genre, is Sweet and Lowdown, about the musician Emmett Ray. The film is close to the genre, but not quite like Allen's previous two works. Sweet and Lowdown also features plenty of pseudo-documentary techniques, but the most interesting thing about it is that although it was released in 1999, it could have beaten This Is Spinal Tap to the punch. The reason is that Woody Allen wrote the script back in 1970, so this film could have been one of his early works. Even with these three films, it's hard to overstate Woody Allen's contribution to the mockumentary. Maybe we'll get lucky and he will make something similar to his early films again. It's often believed that the new wave of mockumentary was started by The Office first, the British version, and then its American remake. But after the first season of the American version of The Office, came Borat, the controversial film starring Sacha Baron Cohen. The comedy about Kazakh journalist Borat Sagdiyev caused quite a stir, and once again highlighted the versatility of the mockumentary. It doesn't always have to be as intimate as The Office or its later successor Parks and Recreation. Is it okay that I'm comparing a film TV series here? It's just to emphasize once again how diverse this genre can appear on screen. Sacha Baron Cohen often used shocking situations to highlight the absurdity of stereotypes and certain aspects of life. The Office does something similar. And in 2014, What We Do in the Shadows was released, another iconic mockumentary. It shifts away from reality into fantasy, breaking yet another wall in the perception of the genre. The New Zealand comedy fully embraces the advantages of the mockumentary format to highlight the humor in its situations. Borat, What We Do in the Shadows, and even The Office quickly gained popularity, each spawning follow-ups. Borat 2 came out in 2020. What We Do in the Shadows turned into a TV series. The Office has inspired numerous remakes across the globe from Canada to Saudi Arabia, with an Australian version debuting this year.
ما انتم شامين شيء؟
لا انا ماني شامه، ايش فيه؟
مدري كذا كأنه بخور. ماجدة هذا بخورك؟
What is a mockumentary? I hope we've managed to understand this genre a bit better together, and maybe even made a watch list from what I've mentioned, though of course it doesn't include plenty of other amazing, cool, and fantastic mockumentaries. By the way, I promised to list pseudo-documentary horror films and compare them with your suggestions. Well, I lied. Of course not. I'll list them now. But don't forget to add to the list in the comments. The Blair Witch Project, the cult film about a group of students who went to film in the forests of Maryland and got lost. The Paranormal Activity franchise, which tells the story of ordinary families haunted by a demon. Cloverfield, a film by Matt Reeves, presented as footage from a video camera capturing a monster's attack on New York City. I'll stop here for now and once again suggest liking this video and subscribing to the channel. This was Max. Goodbye everyone.